Man, in order to prove that humans and wolves can have children together, forcefully went to the mountains and brought a she-wolf home. After days and nights with the she-wolf's belly actually began to grow. Man, seeing this, was not afraid. Instead, he was overjoyed, even said he would throw a big feast to invite the villagers. But to everyone's surprise, that night the man died from a bacterial infection at home. The next day, a feng shui master passed through the village. Upon hearing of the incident, he shook his head repeatedly. He told the villagers that disaster was coming. He explained that a child born from the union of a human and a wolf would be a demon. And such a demon would be heartless, always eager to kill. It would bring great calamity to the village. The villagers, hearing this, quickly chased the she-wolf out of the village that very night. The she-wolf, with her swollen belly, had no choice but to retreat into the deep mountains. After 2.5 years of pregnancy, my wolf mother finally gave birth to me. I was born on a snowy day, and my wolf mother, to protect me, dared not leave the den to hunt for food. She could only use her fur to keep me warm. Days passed like this, and I was on the brink of freezing to death. Just then an old man who was gathering herbs in the mountains found me. My wolf mother didn't stop the old man from taking me. She just looked back at me once before leaving. The old man who found me became my master. Later, when I learned about my mother from him, I went back to the mountains several times searching for her. But I never found any trace of that she-wolf. But there was something strange. At that time our village was very poor. Other families could barely feed their children. But I always had fresh meat for every meal. Whenever I went up the mountain, I would always find a few dead wild animals. My master never asked where the wild meat came from. He would just stew it all and feed me. It wasn't until an old hunter from the village got into trouble that I learned where the wild meat came from. My master was a well-known scholar in the area. That day the old hunter came to my master for help, looking very anxious. Unfortunately, my master was out that day. I thought the old hunter just came for a fortune-telling, but he was so frantic, like an ant on a hot pan. So I asked him, "Uncle Zhang, what's wrong? Did something happen?" Uncle Zhang hesitated for a moment before looking at me and asking, "Xiao Tian, you've been traveling with your master since you were young. How much do you know about these things?" Hearing this, I nodded. "I know a little." I understood he was referring to those mysterious matters. "Then help me take a look at this hand," Uncle Zhang said as he rolled up his sleeve. When I saw it, I was startled. There was a deep wound on his arm, as if it had been torn by some wild animal. Seeing this, I quickly asked, "Uncle Zhang, what happened to you?" He sighed and slowly began to speak. "It happened 2 days ago when I was hunting in the mountains. I came across a lone wolf that had gotten separated. The wolf looked massive. I thought I could get a good price if I killed it. So I secretly shot it and killed the wolf. But as he got closer, the wolf suddenly came back to life and bit him. He yelped in pain and dropped his gun. The wolf then took the chance to escape. When he got home, he tried everything, but it didn't get any better. Every night the wound would hurt unbearably and bleed non-stop. He feared he had encountered something evil, so he came to ask my master for help. When I heard this, I immediately became angry and looked at Uncle Zhang. "Tell me quickly, where did you shoot that wolf? How? Xiao Tian, are you planning to hunt that wolf for some small profit too?" Uncle Zhang's face showed a strange expression. "Forget your profit. If you don't want to die, tell me quickly," I yelled angrily at Uncle Zhang. Uncle Zhang was startled by my shout. His body trembled and he looked terrified. "It was on the mountain. I'll take you there now." I quickly grabbed a medical kit from the backyard. I closed the door and ran out with Uncle Zhang. Our village wasn't far from the mountain. After running with Uncle Zhang for about an hour, we finally arrived at the place Uncle Zhang mentioned. It was under a large tree. There was a clear bloodstain on the ground beneath the tree. I felt a pang in my chest. Not only had the wolf been shot, but it had also bled so much. That wolf, it won't be in trouble, will it? I felt uneasy in my heart. I hurriedly followed the bloodstains, searching. I kept calling out as I searched. By nightfall I still hadn't found anything. I was very anxious. If it weren't for the wolf mom, I'd be dead by now. Uncle Zhang was worried I might get lost, so he stayed with me. At 6 o'clock my master called me. I cried and told him everything. By the time my master went up the mountain with a flashlight, it was already past 9 in the evening. Uncle Zhang immediately went to meet my master when he saw him. Then he showed my master his arm. My master just glanced at it and coldly said, "Go home and apply some boy's urine on it overnight. Remember, no more hunting on this mountain. If anything happens from hunting again, don't come to me." My master's words carried a lot of weight. Uncle Zhang repeatedly agreed. Then he thanked us a few times and went down the mountain. I sat under that tree, but I vaguely heard my master say something. Cause and effect are cyclical. One life can pay for another. Little Zhang might not survive tonight. I didn't have time to think about what my master said. A few minutes later my master sighed and walked over. "Don't worry, if it really is her. With her skills, unless it's a special bullet, she won't be harmed." Hearing this, I immediately felt happy again. "Really, master?" My master smiled and nodded at me. "It's getting late. Let's head back." Reluctantly I left the medical kit under the big tree. I shouted loudly. I've left the things here. While walking down the mountain I kept looking back, but I didn't see any figures. I couldn't help but feel disappointed. She saved my life when I was a child. Why now that I've grown up? Does she refuse to even see me once? As I rode back with my master on his electric bike, it was already midnight. Neither of us had eaten. My master quickly stir-fried a few small dishes. After we finished eating we each went to our rooms to sleep. That night I was in a daze as I slept. I felt my face itch. It felt like something furry was brushing against my face. I tried to open my eyes but I couldn't. So I just went back to sleep. The next morning when I opened the store door, I found a wild rabbit that had recently died in front of the door. Curiously I picked up the rabbit. But I noticed there was also a medical kit behind the rabbit. When I saw the medical kit my eyes instantly turned red. This was the same medical kit I had left under the tree yesterday. My mother came to see me last night. She came to let me know she was alright. I was so happy I cried. I took the rabbit inside to find my master. But when my master saw the rabbit his face grew serious. Xiao Tian, from now on we don't eat things like this. Some things we just can't mess with. I found these words a bit strange. My master usually loves eating wild game. Why would he say this today? And who is he talking about when he says some things? Since my master said so, I could only give the rabbit to the neighbor Xiao Hua. Then I went to the market to buy some vegetables. When I returned my master had a stern look on his face. I didn't think much of it. Today someone had asked my master to go read fortunes, but my master said he couldn't go because he had something to do. I was puzzled wondering what was going on today. Sure enough in the afternoon, the village head suddenly pushed the door open. My master immediately went up to greet him. The village head looked at my master and sighed. Old Li, come with me to old Zhang's house. Old Zhang is dead at home. He was found today. They are all from the same village. They are arranging his burial. I was shocked when I heard this. The old Zhang the village head was talking about was the same Zhang Shu who came to see me yesterday. How could he have suddenly died? Alright village head, you go ahead first. I'll prepare some things and come right away. My master spoke with a calm tone. It seemed like he already knew what was coming. After the village head left my master's face immediately turned grim. Why be so ruthless? I didn't understand what my master meant by that. I was just a bit saddened to hear that Uncle Zhang had passed. Then I went into the house and took out a box. It contained everything needed for the burial. Since this wasn't my first time going to a funeral with my master, I packed the items quickly. After packing I was ready to go with my master. But my master took the box from me himself. He told me to stay home and not go anywhere. Then my master rode off alone on the electric bike toward Uncle Zhang's house. I stood there stunned for a while before coming to my senses. In the past whenever there was a funeral in the village my master would always take me along. Why didn't he take me today? I felt a bit strange. At 10 o'clock that night my master returned. As soon as he entered he looked at me with a stern face and said, Xiao Tian, you're not allowed to go up the mountain again. Did you hear me, master? My mother. I looked at my master not understanding. It's just a cold-blooded animal. Not your mother, my master said coldly. I was stunned at that moment. My master had never said that about it before. What was going on? After a long silence my master sighed. Xiao Tian, there are some things you'll understand later. The next morning, my master went to take care of Uncle Zhang's funeral arrangements. I stayed at the shop by myself. It was a quiet day and by 6 p.m., a woman came in. She was dressed in farmer's clothes. Her leg seemed to be injured and she was limping. Seeing this I quickly went over to her. Auntie, are you here for a reading? My master is out, and he doesn't do readings at night. I know. The woman nodded at me. Then what's this about? I looked at her confused. It's nothing major. It's just that my leg is injured. Can you help me treat it? The woman said pulling up her pants leg. She revealed a circular wound that was still bleeding. Isn't this a gunshot wound? How could a farmer woman get shot? I felt a bit confused, but I quickly ran to the back to grab the medical kit. Then I crouched down to check her wound, but I discovered the bullet hadn't been removed yet. Auntie, the bullet is still inside. I don't have any anesthetics here. How about I take you to the hospital? It's impossible to remove the bullet without anesthesia. Not even a woman could handle it. I wouldn't be able to handle it even as a man. Don't worry about it. I came specifically to find you. Please help me handle it. The woman shook her head. I could see that the woman had made up her mind. Reluctantly I nodded in agreement. By the time I had removed the bullet, there was already a pool of blood on the ground. Anyone else would probably have fainted from the pain by now. But the woman didn't make a sound. She was just pale-faced. I wrapped the woman's gunshot wound with gauze, and applied the herbs my master had collected from the mountain. The woman stood up and said she would leave. I thought she had gone back. But unexpectedly, she returned carrying 2 wild rabbits. I was somewhat confused. It's very hard to hunt wild rabbits. How did this woman manage to catch 2 of them? And so easily? Eat them. If it's not enough I'll bring more later. The woman said to me. No need. Auntie, you can take them back and eat them yourself. You don't want my things anymore? The woman narrowed her eyes slightly. Her voice had changed a little. I was puzzled by her words. I was sure this was the first time I'd met her. She wasn't from our village. Why did it sound like she'd given me things before? Auntie, I just gave you a simple treatment earlier. You really didn't have to do this. I said helplessly. The woman only gave me a deep glance. Then without saying a word she walked out. I reached out as if to stop her. But seeing that she had already walked out, I sighed helplessly, looking at the large pool of blood on the floor. I went inside to grab a mop to clean it up. At this moment my master walked in from outside. He glanced at the blood on the floor, then sniffed it. His face immediately turned dark as he walked toward me. Xiaoshan, who just came here? A woman in her 40s came earlier. I truthfully told my master what had happened. After hearing this my master sneered. What woman? That was your mother coming to see you. Hearing my master's words I was shocked. Of course I knew what my master meant by this. That woman earlier was the mother wolf. Seeing my face go pale my master immediately walked over. What did she say to you? I felt flustered, even somewhat at a loss. My mother actually came to see me. But why didn't she say it directly? I told my master everything my mom had said. He sneered and then looked outside. Humans have their way. Spirits have their way. If you're really doing this for Xiaoshan's sake, then don't come again. My master's voice was loud. After that day I thought my mother wouldn't come back to see me. There were no more wild rabbits or anything like that outside. Until one day at noon. The village head walked in with a worried expression. Today my master hadn't gone out. He stood up to greet the village head when he saw him enter. Old Li, the carpenter Chen at the village head also died. Can you help take care of it? The village head's voice sounded strange, as if he had seen something terrifying. My master frowned. How did Chen the carpenter die? I was very curious as well. Speaking just of lifespan, forget about living to be 100. But living to 70 or 80 should be no problem. But Chen the carpenter should still be under 40. How could he have died? The village head shook his head, his face pale. I can't really explain what happened. Village head, if there's something just say it directly. My master said anxiously. Hearing the village head's words my curiosity grew even more. The village head hesitated for a moment before he said tremblingly. It seems like he didn't die on his own. And he wasn't killed by a person either. He was apparently killed by some wild beast. Chen the carpenter's entire chest was hollowed out. It was very terrifying. My master's face darkened. He began gathering the funeral supplies on his own. I followed the village head out. Before leaving my master gave me a stern look. Stay here in the shop. If she comes again, tell her that doing such things will incur divine punishment. After saying this my master walked out. I stood there at a loss for what to do. My mom killed Chen the carpenter? Why would she kill someone? I sat in the shop in a daze, not knowing how the afternoon passed. By the time I snapped back to reality, it had already started raining heavily outside. I glanced at the time and realized it was already around 7 or 8 p.m. I was worried my master wouldn't return, so I quickly closed the shop door. Grabbing an umbrella I prepared to go to Chen the carpenter's house to fetch my master. Honestly I was more curious to see how Chen the carpenter had died. I quickly arrived at Chen the carpenter's house. Since they had just discovered his death today, everything looked unprepared. Chen the carpenter's body was laid out on a wooden board. It was covered by a white cloth. There weren't many people in the morning hall. When I entered I didn't see my master. I walked over to Chen the carpenter's body. Then I slowly lifted the white cloth. What I saw was a pale lifeless face. His eyes were wide open staring directly at me. It felt as though I had caused his death. This terrifying scene startled me. But in order to find out if my mother really killed him, I gritted my teeth and continued to lift the white cloth. At that moment my master's cold voice came from behind. Xiaoshan, why are you here? I told you to stay at the shop. The sudden sound caused me to jump back a few steps in fright. I looked at my master with a pale face, my hands trembling as I pointed at Chen the carpenter. Master, his eyes are still open. He died so horribly. Of course his eyes wouldn't close. My master snorted coldly as he walked over. Then with a serious look he stared at me. Did she come today? I knew my master was talking about the wolf mother. I shook my head, eyes red. Master looked at me shaking my head, then spoke again. Go back for now. Prepare well for tomorrow, we'll head to the mountain. Head to the mountain? Why are we going to the mountain? I felt that master's tone was a bit off. Why else? Kill someone, pay the price. Owe a debt, pay it back. Master left me with this sentence, took the umbrella from my hands and walked out. I stood there at a loss for what to do. My mind was in a mess. I walked over to Chen the carpenter's body. I suddenly lifted the white cloth covering the body. Chen the carpenter's chest had been ripped open. It looked like it had been caused by some kind of sharp claws. Seeing such a death, the last bit of hope in my heart collapsed. I didn't even know how I got back home. But I knew one thing. I couldn't let the wolf mother die. Back at home I packed some things, then secretly snuck out of the house and ran up the mountain. I ran alone on the road holding a flashlight. The mountain is just behind our village, but I had to pass through a graveyard. This graveyard is where people from our village are buried after they pass away. Because Uncle John passed away a few days ago, there were a lot of wet paper money scattered on the road. Paper money extended in white lines through the night. It made me feel somewhat unnerved. I couldn't help but quicken my pace. But no matter how fast I ran, the small hills in the distance appeared even more prominent in the darkness, making everything feel eerie and frightening. Master had said that after a person dies their soul lingers nearby. I've been with my master for so long, but I had never seen a ghost. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in them. After all, old John had only died a few days ago. Just as I was thinking about running through it all, an ear-piercing sound split the sky. A strange and eerie laughter reached my ears. This sudden sound startled me. I instinctively raised my flashlight and shined it toward where the sound had come from. In the distance, a pair of eyes were staring at me. I almost screamed out of fear, but after a closer look it turned out to be a grave. There was an owl staring at me from above. It was making eerie sounds like a human's voice. Hearing such a sound in this desolate mountain wilderness was truly terrifying. Luckily I'm fairly brave, otherwise I would have bolted by now. I was getting goosebumps as the owl kept staring at me, so I picked up a stone and threw it at the owl. The owl dodged and flew up into the air. I shook my head and was about to continue walking, when I suddenly heard another sound. It sounded like the stone I threw hit a wooden board. I reflexively shone my flashlight in that direction. The light landed on a newly erected gravestone. The name John Shukchin was written on it. Isn't this old John's grave? I sighed and was about to go pay my respects, but I vaguely noticed something like a hole behind the gravestone. I widened my eyes and hurried over. To my shock, old John's grave had been dug up, and the black coffin inside was exposed.